The storm that battered the Oregon coast that November night sounded like the ocean trying to reclaim the land, which seemed perfectly appropriate to Dr. David Chen, given how his life had been falling apart for the past 6 months. His divorce papers sat on the kitchen table next to a bottle of wine that had seemed like a good idea 3 glasses ago, while rain hammered against the windows of his converted research station with the persistence of regret. David had chosen this isolated outpost specifically because nothing interesting ever happened here. Just tide pools, marine specimens, and enough solitude to rebuild his shattered academic career without having to explain why his marriage had imploded along with his tenure prospects at UC San Diego. The Coastal Marine Research Facility provided perfect exile for someone whose expertise in oceanic ecosystems had become professionally irrelevant after budget cuts eliminated his department. The knocking on his door started so softly that he almost mistook it for storm debris hitting the building. When it intensified into urgent, rhythmic pounding, David assumed it was probably a stranded motorist or lost hiker seeking shelter. Emergency situations were about the only thing that could drive anyone to his remote location on a night when even the Coast Guard had suspended operations. "Coming," David called, setting down his wine glass and checking the security monitor out of habit. The exterior cameras showed only wind-driven rain and darkness, but the knocking continued with desperate intensity that suggested someone in genuine distress. David opened the door expecting to find a soaked human in need of help. Instead, he discovered something that made him question whether the wine had been stronger than advertised. The woman standing in his doorway appeared human, except for skin that seemed to shimmer with its own faint luminescence and ears that swept back from her skull in elegant, pointed curves that caught the porch light like sculptured silver. She was soaked through, her dark hair plastered against a face that combined classical beauty with otherworldly features that belonged in science fiction rather than marine biology. More unsettling was the bundle she clutched against her chest, something wrapped in what looked like specialized fabric that pulsed with the same bioluminescent patterns as her skin. When she spoke, her voice carried musical tones that made English sound like poetry despite her obvious distress. "Please help," she said, her accent unlike anything David had encountered. "Baby very sick. Need water, need safe place. Storm break machine, cannot breathe much longer." David stared at this impossible visitor, while his scientific training warred with common sense. Everything about her suggested non-human biology, but that was presumably impossible unless decades of government secrecy had been more successful than anyone imagined. "Ma'am, are you?" David started, then realized he had no idea how to finish that question without sounding either insane or offensive. The woman's bioluminescent patterns shifted to urgent flashes that needed no translation. "Please," she repeated, pulling back the fabric to reveal an infant whose delicate features matched her own alien characteristics. The baby's breathing seemed labored, and her skin showed the same luminescent qualities as her mother's, though dimmer and more irregular. "Machine broken," the woman explained, indicating a device strapped to her back that looked like advanced technology disguised as hiking equipment. "Air wrong for us, poison slow but sure. Baby first to die without help." David's marine biology background kicked in, overriding his shock at encountering what appeared to be amphibious humanoids. If they were truly aquatic species, their respiratory systems would be adapted for different atmospheric compositions, making Earth's air gradually toxic, despite their ability to survive in it temporarily. "You need water," David said, his scientific instincts taking control. "Not just drinking water, you need to be in water to breathe properly." The woman's relief was visible in both her expression and the shifting patterns of her bioluminescence. "You understand. Most humans think we like land creatures, but we from deep waters of far world." David stepped aside to let them enter, noting how the woman moved with fluid grace that suggested comfort in three-dimensional environments. I'm David Chen. I study marine life, so I might be able to help. I am Lyra of the deepmost currents, she replied with formal precision that made David realize he was probably dealing with someone whose culture treated introductions as ritual rather than casual exchange. This is daughter Kaya. We flee from terrible danger but storm damage our breathing machine. David led them toward his research laboratory, which fortunately contained several large aquatic tanks designed for studying marine specimens. Lyra, what kind of water do you need? Fresh, salt, specific temperature, or mineral content? Salt water best, but can survive in any water if pH correct and temperature not too cold. Lyra's patterns brightened as she saw David's tank systems. You have knowledge of water-living things. It's my job, though I have to admit I've never worked with sentient aquatic species before. David began preparing the largest tank while Lyra explained her situation in increasingly fluent English that suggested remarkable linguistic adaptability. Her people, the Tethians, were refugees from an oceanic world whose sun had begun dying, forcing evacuation to planets that could support aquatic life. Earth's oceans provided adequate habitat, but the atmospheric composition made prolonged surface contact dangerous. Most of my people live in deep places, underwater cities where air composition not matter, Lyra explained, as David adjusted water chemistry to approximate oceanic conditions. But surface travel sometimes necessary, and portable breathing machines allow short time on land. Kaya's condition improved dramatically once Lyra immersed her in the prepared tank. The infant's labored breathing eased as her skin patterns brightened to match her mother's healthy luminescence. David watched in fascination as both Tethians seemed to absorb oxygen directly through their skin while also breathing air in modified patterns. She's beautiful, David said, studying Kaya's delicate features that somehow managed to be both alien and universally recognizable as a healthy baby. How old is she? 6 months by your time measurement. Still very young, still need much care and protection. Lyra's patterns shifted to deeper colors that suggested complex emotions. That why we flee. Kaya in great danger from those who would use her for terrible purposes. David felt something cold settle in his chest as he began to understand that he wasn't just helping stranded travelers. What kind of danger? Lyra's expression grew haunted as she spoke in careful English that conveyed horrors beyond simple translation. Humans who steal Tethian people use us for work that kill body and break mind. They take families apart, use children to force parents' cooperation. My bondmate Marcus captured 3 weeks ago. I escape with Kaya, but have nowhere safe to go. Human traffickers are kidnapping your people. Worse than trafficking. They want our knowledge of water worlds, our ability to sense sea creature feelings, our biological understanding of ocean systems. Lyra's patterns darkened with what David recognized as grief mixed with rage. They force us to help them damage oceans, poison waters, kill things we protect. Those who refuse are tortured until mind breaks. David stared at this refugee mother, who had stumbled onto his doorstep carrying knowledge that could revolutionize marine science, while fleeing from people who wanted to exploit that same knowledge for destructive purposes. His quiet academic life had just become exponentially more complicated. Lyra, you can't stay here long-term. This facility isn't equipped for permanent residence, and if people are looking for you. I know, Lyra replied, her luminescent patterns showing resignation mixed with desperate hope. But storm will pass, breathing machine can be repaired. Just need safe place for few days while Kaya recovers strength. David looked at the infant sleeping peacefully in his research tank, then at her mother, whose alien beauty couldn't hide the exhaustion and fear that marked her as someone who had been running for her life. 3 days ago, his biggest concerns had involved grant applications and loneliness. Now, he was harboring refugees whose presence could attract attention from organizations that apparently specialized in kidnapping and exploiting sentient aquatic species. The rational choice was obvious. Contact authorities and transfer responsibility to people trained for refugee situations. But looking at Lyra's expression as she watched her daughter sleep safely for the first time in weeks, David realized that rationality didn't always align with doing the right thing. 3 days, David said, understanding that he was about to complicate his life in ways he couldn't predict. But if we're going to do this, I need to understand exactly what we're dealing with. Lyra's response filled the laboratory with bioluminescent patterns that needed no translation, pure gratitude from someone who had been running out of hope, until a marine biologist chose to open his door during a storm that had changed both their lives forever. 3 days became 3 weeks as David discovered that helping Tethian refugees involved considerably more complexity than providing temporary shelter. Lyra's damaged breathing apparatus required components that didn't exist in any human supply catalog, forcing David to improvise solutions using his marine research equipment and increasingly creative engineering. The osmotic filter needs recalibration every 6 hours, Lyra explained as she worked alongside David in his laboratory, her hands moving through the equipment with intuitive understanding of systems he'd spent years learning to operate. Tethian biology processes atmospheric gases differently than human lungs. David watched in fascination as Lyra adjusted his spectrometer to analyze water chemistry in ways his training had never covered. Her knowledge of oceanic ecosystems went far beyond anything in human scientific literature, revealing perspectives on marine biology that challenged fundamental assumptions about how aquatic life functioned. Your people understand ocean systems better than our best marine biologists, David observed, studying readouts that showed water quality measurements he hadn't known were possible. We live in ocean, are part of ocean systems for millions of years, Lyra replied, her English improving daily through what seemed like accelerated language acquisition. Humans study ocean from outside like watching dance through window. Tethians dance with waters, feel currents in bones, know what sea creatures think and feel. She demonstrated by placing her hands in one of David's specimen tanks, containing local tide pool organisms. Immediately, the various sea anemones, crabs, and small fish began moving in coordinated patterns that looked suspiciously like organized behavior rather than random marine activity. How are you doing that? Empathic connection with water life. All ocean creatures share currents of feeling, streams of information that flow through water like blood through body. Lyra's bioluminescent patterns shifted to gentle blues and greens as she communicated with the marine specimens. These small creatures very frightened, confused by being in artificial environment. I tell them they are safe, help them understand their temporary home. David realized he was witnessing abilities that could revolutionize marine conservation efforts, if properly understood and ethically applied. Could you teach this to humans? Some humans have potential for empathic connection, but requires different way of thinking about relationship between self and ocean. Lyra withdrew her hands from the tank, leaving behind sea creatures that continued moving in the organized patterns she had somehow initiated. Most humans see ocean as resource to be used. Tethians see ocean as family to be protected. Their collaboration deepened as David learned to incorporate Tethian biological knowledge into his research, while Lyra gained familiarity with human scientific methods. Kaya thrived in the carefully maintained aquatic environment David had created, her development accelerating in ways that suggested hybrid vigor rather than purely alien biology. David, Lyra said one morning as she helped him calibrate monitoring equipment, there is something about Kaya I must tell you. David paused in his equipment adjustments, noting the shift in Lyra's bioluminescent patterns to colors he had learned indicated serious conversation. What kind of something? Kaya is not fully Tethian. Her biological father was human, though Marcus bonded with us as family unit when she was very small. Lyra's patterns showed complex emotions that mixed love, loss, and apprehension. This why she can survive in Earth atmosphere better than pure Tethians, why her empathic abilities developing differently than normal for our people. David studied Kaya, who was floating contentedly in her tank, while demonstrating motor skills that seemed advanced for a 6-month-old of any species. So she's a hybrid. Yes, though this makes her much more dangerous to those who would exploit Tethian abilities. Human Tethian children potentially bridge between species, capable of surviving in environments that pure Tethians cannot tolerate while retaining empathic connection to ocean life. And this is why people are hunting her specifically. Lyra's patterns darkened with fear that she tried to hide behind practical explanation. Organizations that capture Tethians are very interested in breeding programs that might produce hybrid workers capable of operating in any environment while maintaining access to oceanic empathic networks. Kaya represents proof that such hybridization is possible. The government surveillance lasted exactly 18 hours before David realized that Agent Cross had no intention of waiting for his decision. Hidden cameras showed federal agents systematically searching the coastline while specialized equipment scanned for the energy signatures that Tethian life support systems produced. More disturbing were the intercepted communications indicating that Lyra and Kaya were specifically targeted individuals rather than random refugees. "They know exactly who you are," David told Lyra as they prepared for what might be their last night of safety in his laboratory. "This isn't about general alien policy. They're hunting your family specifically." Lyra's bioluminescent patterns showed grim understanding as she held Kaya close, while monitoring the baby's vital signs on David's improvised medical equipment. "Marcus must have told them about us. Not willingly, they break minds of captured Tethians, force them to reveal information about families and hideaway places." "What kind of information?" "Locations of other refugees, names of human helpers, plans for resistance against capture operations." Lyra's patterns darkened with pain that went beyond personal loss. "Marcus knows about underground networks that help Tethians escape government facilities. Under torture, he would eventually reveal everything." David realized they weren't just dealing with local enforcement, but with systematic operations designed to capture and exploit an entire species. How many Tethians are imprisoned in these facilities? Hundreds, maybe thousands. Families torn apart, children raised in captivity to be more compliant, parents forced to work until bodies fail and minds break. Lyra's empathic abilities seemed to be picking up emotional resonance from distant sources, causing her distress that went beyond their immediate situation. "I can feel them sometimes, across vast distances, despair and pain from those still imprisoned." And Kaya is particularly valuable because she's a hybrid. Yes, but also because her empathic abilities developing in ways that pure Tethians cannot achieve. She can potentially bridge between human and Tethian consciousness, creating connections that could change how both species understand oceanic life. Lyra adjusted Kaya's life support with practiced efficiency, while her patterns showed maternal protectiveness mixed with desperate planning. This makes her either greatest hope for cooperation between our peoples or most dangerous weapon if her abilities are corrupted by those who would exploit them. Their conversation was interrupted by David's emergency alert system, detecting unauthorized entry into the facility's perimeter. Through security monitors, they watched Agent Cross and a larger team of specialists approaching with equipment that looked considerably more advanced than standard law enforcement gear. "Time's up," David said, helping Lyra prepare Kaya's portable life support while they moved toward the emergency exit he'd hoped they wouldn't need. "There's a service tunnel that leads to the tidal caves, if we can reach the water." "David, they will chase us. Your life will be destroyed if you help us escape." Lyra's pattern showed gratitude mixed with guilt as she struggled with accepting help that would cost David everything he'd built. "Maybe better if I surrender," negotiate for Kaya's safety. They're not interested in negotiation, David replied, leading them through corridors he'd memorized during 3 weeks of paranoid preparation. And I'm not interested in watching a family get torn apart because I was too cowardly to do the right thing. They reached the service tunnel just as David's security system reported multiple breaches of the facility's main entrances. Agent Cross's team was conducting a systematic search using technology that could probably detect Tethian biological signatures through standard hiding places. The tunnel led to natural caves that connected with the tidal pools David had been studying for months, providing access to the ocean during high tide. Lyra's empathic abilities immediately connected with the marine life in the caves, creating a network of living sensors that could detect approaching threats through oceanic awareness. Water creatures very agitated, Lyra reported as they navigated through partially flooded passages toward the open sea. They sense many humans moving through areas that usually empty. Also sense something else, other Tethians nearby. Other refugees. No different feeling. Tethians who not hiding, who ready to fight. Lyra's patterns shifted to colors David had never seen before, suggesting communication with distant members of her species. David, there are others like us working to free imprisoned families. Tonight they move against facility where Marcus held. David realized they were witnessing coordination between refugee networks he hadn't known existed. A rescue operation. Yes, but very dangerous. If fails, all remaining free Tethians will be hunted with much greater force. Lyra paused in her navigation as her empathic connection brought her information from sources David couldn't perceive. But if succeeds, maybe we not have to hide anymore. They emerged from the caves as federal agents began searching the tunnel system behind them, their equipment creating electromagnetic interference that disrupted the local marine ecosystem in ways that enraged every aquatic creature within miles. Lyra's empathic connection with ocean life had turned the entire coastal region into an early warning system that tracked their pursuers' every movement. This way, Lyra directed, leading David through tidal pools toward a hidden cove where other figures waited in the pre-dawn darkness. Resistance members who help families escape capture operations. The Tethian resistance proved to be a mixed group of aliens and humans working together to sabotage government exploitation programs. Their leader, an elderly Tethian named Deep Current Memory, communicated with Lyra through rapid bioluminescent exchanges that conveyed complex information faster than human speech could manage. The rescue mission begins in 1 hour, Deep Current Memory explained in accented but fluent English. Facility where Marcus imprisoned has 37 Tethian captives, including 12 children. Tonight, we free all of them, or none survive to be exploited further. David understood he was being offered a chance to join something much larger than protecting one family. What do you need from me? Your knowledge of marine systems could help us create diversions that make rescue possible, Deep Current Memory replied, studying David with ancient eyes that seemed to weigh his commitment. But once you join this operation, there is no return to quiet academic life. Government will hunt you as terrorist and traitor. David looked at Lyra, who was communicating with Kaya through empathic connection, while preparing for an operation that could reunite their family or get them all killed. 3 weeks ago, he'd been hiding from personal failure and professional disappointment. Now, he faced a choice between remaining a bystander or becoming an active participant in a struggle that could determine the future of an entire species. What's the plan? David asked, understanding that he just committed to a path that would transform him from marine biologist to alien rights activist. As Deep Current Memory outlined an operation that combined Tethian empathic abilities with human technology in ways that challenged David's understanding of what interspecies cooperation could achieve. He realized that opening his door to a desperate mother had led him to discover his purpose in a conflict he never knew existed. The rescue mission would begin with the sunrise, and nothing would ever be the same for anyone involved. The assault on the government detention facility began at dawn, with David creating the most sophisticated marine biological warfare in human history. Using his knowledge of oceanic ecosystems combined with Tethian empathic abilities to coordinate sea life, he triggered a coordinated disruption that made the facility's coastal location into a liability rather than strategic advantage. All marine life within 5 kilometers responding to empathic coordination. Lyra reported from the command position, where she maintained psychic contact with dozens of Tethian operatives surrounding the target facility. Dolphins blocking harbor approaches, sea birds disrupting aerial surveillance, tide pool creatures interfering with ground sensors. David watched in amazement as his theoretical understanding of marine biology became practical sabotage under Tethian guidance. Every creature in the coastal ecosystem had become part of a coordinated resistance operation that confused human security systems while providing cover for the rescue team. Phase 2 initiating. Deep current memory announced through bioluminescent communication that David's translator equipment converted to tactical updates. Infiltration teams reaching primary detention areas. The government facility that held Marcus and 36 other Tethian prisoners was designed as a research center disguised as a refugee processing station. But the resistance had been gathering intelligence for months. David's role involved coordinating the biological disruption while monitoring government response patterns to predict their tactical adjustments. Security teams deploying countermeasures against marine interference, David reported, watching satellite feeds that showed facility personnel attempting to restore sensor functionality. They're not equipped for this kind of biological warfare. Because humans not understand that ocean is living system with consciousness and will, Lyra replied, her empathic connection allowing her to coordinate defensive measures across species boundaries. They see separate creatures where we see unified life, responding to coordinated purpose. The rescue operation's complexity amazed David as he realized he was witnessing military coordination that operated through empathic connection rather than electronic communication. Every Tethian operative shared tactical awareness through psychic networks that couldn't be intercepted or jammed by human technology. Contact established with imprisoned families, deep current memory announced. Marcus alive but severely damaged by interrogation procedures. Medical treatment will be required immediately after extraction. David felt Lyra's emotional response to news about her bondmate. Relief mixed with grief for trauma that couldn't be easily healed. Their relationship had evolved into something deeper than temporary partnership. But David understood that Marcus remained part of Lyra's family structure in ways that transcended human romantic categories. Children located in separate facility wing. Another operative reported through the bioluminescent communication network. 12 young Tethians ranging from infants to adolescents, all showing signs of psychological conditioning designed to make them compliant with human authority. Bastards, David muttered, understanding that the government operation involved more than exploitation. It included systematic psychological abuse designed to create a generation of Tethians who would serve human interests without question. The extraction phase proceeded with precision that demonstrated months of careful planning. Tethian operatives used their empathic abilities to calm traumatized prisoners, while human resistance members provided technical support for disabling security systems. David's coordination of marine life created ongoing diversions that kept facility security focused on external threats, while the real operation proceeded inside. All prisoners secured, deep current memory announced. Beginning evacuation to extraction points. But Agent Cross had been prepared for rescue attempts. As Tethian families emerged from the facility, The government surveillance lasted exactly 18 hours before David realized that Agent Cross had no intention of waiting for his decision. Hidden cameras showed federal agents systematically searching the coastline while specialized equipment scanned for the energy signatures that Tethian life support systems produced. More disturbing were the intercepted communications indicating that Lyra and Kaya were specifically targeted individuals rather than random refugees. "They know exactly who you are," David told Lyra as they prepared for what might be their last night of safety in his laboratory. "This isn't about general alien policy. They're hunting your family specifically." Lyra's bioluminescent patterns showed grim understanding as she held Kaya close, while monitoring the baby's vital signs on David's improvised medical equipment. "Marcus must have told them about us. Not willingly, they break minds of captured Tethians, force them to reveal information about families and hideaway places." "What kind of information?" "Locations of other refugees, names of human helpers, plans for resistance against capture operations." Lyra's patterns darkened with pain that went beyond personal loss. "Marcus knows about underground networks that help Tethians escape government facilities. Under torture, he would eventually reveal everything." David realized they weren't just dealing with local enforcement, but with systematic operations designed to capture and exploit an entire species. "How many Tethians are imprisoned in these facilities?" "Hundreds, maybe thousands. Families torn apart, children raised in captivity to be more compliant, parents forced to work until bodies fail and minds break." Lyra's empathic abilities seemed to be picking up emotional resonance from distant sources, causing her distress that went beyond their immediate situation. "I can feel them sometimes, across vast distances, despair and pain from those still imprisoned. And Kaya is particularly valuable because she's a hybrid." "Yes, but also because her empathic abilities developing in ways that pure Tethians cannot achieve. She can potentially bridge between human and Tethian consciousness, creating connections that could change how both species understand oceanic life." Lyra adjusted Kaya's life support with practiced efficiency,